On March 14, 1853, in a parish courthouse somewhere along Louisiana's Mississippi River corridor, a transaction took place, one intentionally omitted from official auction ledgers for more than 100 years. A pregnant woman was sold for not $12, but 12 cents, barely the worth of a loaf of bread. The sale was legal, bearing 7 male witnesses whose signatures endure on the deed. Yet the woman's name was absent from every parish record before and after that day. In 1897, local historians found the receipt sealed within a courthouse wall during renovations, and immediately secreted it away again. What was scrawled on the document's reverse drove them to silence over truth. Tonight we uncover what they hid, and why the descendants of those 7 signatories labored generations to bury this history. But first, before we continue the story of what occurred in that Louisiana courthouse, do one thing: subscribe and activate notifications. These forgotten histories, the ones someone tried to erase, deserve to be known. And tell me, where are you listening from? Share your city or state. Let's trace just how far these buried stories travel. The event that unfolded that March morning was not a mistake nor born from confusion. It was intentional, calculated, and entirely legitimate under the laws shaping Louisiana before the Civil War reshaped the nation. St. Helena Parish in 1853 was a region where Spanish moss draped oak limbs so heavily the sun struggled through, where the air carried the taste of river mud and sugarcane smoke, and where prosperity was tallied not in land, but in enslaved human beings. Nestled between Baton Rouge and the Mississippi line, near enough to river commerce to thrive yet secluded enough to hide its truths, the parish held firm to its quiet power. Greensburg, its parish seat, clustered whitewashed buildings around a courthouse square, where each Saturday unfolded like ritual, an auction block on the courthouse steps. Furniture, livestock, acreage, and people changed owners with the detached precision of clerks and the sanctity of church order. Auctioneers ran their trade with skill, buyers knew their budgets, and all accepted that what occurred on those steps was lawful, customary, and enforced by men convinced they embodied civilization itself. That spring, 3 men controlled St. Helena Parish. Judge Amos Crenshaw, age 62, presided with biblical gravity. 4 decades of rulings upholding property rights above all else had molded the parish like a river sculpts its banks, slowly, unrelentingly, with the inevitability of nature. Below him, in formal rank but near in influence, stood plantation master Duncan Fairholme, heir to more than 4,000 fertile acres held by his family since Louisiana achieved statehood. 47 years old, Charleston-educated, French-speaking, relentless in enterprise, his estate, Bellamont, was overseen by Silas Guthrie, a man whispered about for cruelty so intense that terror maintained order. The third figure in this power triad was Nathaniel Pewitt, the parish tax assessor and deed recorder. At 39, he was driven by a hunger for status in a society ruled by lineage he lacked. Fresh from Virginia, he had reinvented himself through counterfeit letters of reference, understanding well that the tumult of Western expansion allowed a man to become whomever he dared, provided he was willing to do what others would not. On March 14th, these 3 men converged for the sake of a woman whose very existence they had labored to erase from every document they controlled. Her name was Clara Ara. Born on a Virginia tobacco plantation roughly 23 years prior, because enslaved births rarely earned precise records, she had been sold south at 15, torn from her mother and younger siblings in a Richmond auction on a warm late summer Tuesday. Edmund Fairholme, Duncan's father, purchased her. When Edmund died of cholera in 1849, his estate, including 47 enslaved people, passed to Duncan. Clara Ara worked inside Bellamont's main house. She possessed skill with figures, could read despite laws forbidding literacy, and carried a quiet dignity Duncan first noticed, then resented, and ultimately sought to break. By October 1852, she was pregnant. She never named the father. She did not have to. Everyone in the house knew. The enslaved women beside her knew. Duncan's wife Margaret knew. Duncan himself knew, and rage overtook him at the sight of Clara Ara. His hands trembled from fury, because the father was not Duncan. It was his younger brother, William. William Fairholme stood in stark contrast to Duncan. Where Duncan was stern, William laughed freely. Where Duncan reduced people to assets, William recognized the deep moral rot in the system he benefited from, yet lacked courage to challenge it. At 28, unmarried, living in the overseer's cottage under the guise of managing northern fields, he mostly drank and read abolitionist tracts smuggled from New Orleans. His connection with Clara Ara began in conversation. She delivered meals twice a day. He asked about her past. She answered carefully, then honestly, realizing he listened unlike other white men. Weeks turned to months. Words became something forbidden, affection crossing every line society erected. When Clara Ara's pregnancy became visible in late December, William did the unthinkable. He approached Duncan and offered to buy her freedom. The meeting took place in Duncan's study on a Saturday night. No transcript survives, but the aftermath was fully documented. Duncan refused, and not merely refused, but reacted with insult. To him, William had violated property sanctity, threatened racial order, and jeopardized family honor so gravely it could destroy them if known. William declared he loved Clara Ara, that she carried his child, that they should flee to a free state. Duncan's retaliation was swift. He arranged to sell Clara at a public auction on March 14th, alongside property seized for unpaid debts, on the courthouse steps, in full daylight, and entirely lawful. Yet Duncan layered cruelty. He set her minimum price at 12 cents. Enslaved women of childbearing age averaged $800 to $200 in Louisiana then. By pricing her at pennies, he declared her worthless, humiliated William, and ensured no legitimate owner would bid, since price signaled condition. And any woman sold for cents must be diseased or incapable. Duncan knew precisely one bidder would step forward: Silas Guthrie. He meant not to send Clara far from William's reach, but to punish her under the harshest hands near. The night before the auction, William vanished. He left no note, borrowed no horse, simply walked away after midnight and never returned to St. Helena Parish. Rumors filled the void. Some believed he headed north to abolitionists in Boston. Others claimed he drowned himself in the Mississippi, unable to face his impotence. A few murmured Duncan had him killed and buried in cane fields among unmarked graves of enslaved dead. But the truth was at once simpler and more unsettling. William went to Judge Crenshaw's home at dawn and offered everything he owned, about $3,000 in inheritance and land, for a single act. He begged the judge to invalidate the sale, to find a legal flaw, to buy him time to save Clara. Crenshaw listened like a man humoring a child arguing the sky should be green. When William finished, the judge asked only one question. "Did your brother sign the lawful deed of sale?" William admitted he had. "Then the transaction stands," Crenshaw replied. "Your sorrow does not outweigh property law. Good evening, Mr. Fairholme." William walked out knowing that every system, every regulation, every influential figure in the parish would defend Duncan, not merely out of cruelty, though cruelty was common, but because allowing affection to outweigh ownership would unravel their entire economic order. If love could trump property claims, the whole structure would crumble. Clara spent her final night at Bellamont among the women in the quarters, where they braided her hair and sang songs older than Louisiana, older than the United States, melodies carried from Africa in shipholds. They knew they would likely never see her again. They knew exactly what men like Silas Guthrie did to the women they controlled. An elder cook named Bethy, who had endured half a century in chains, pressed a small wrapped bundle into Clara's palms. Inside lay a knife no longer than Clara's hand, wrapped in cloth. "Hide this," Bethy murmured. "Hide it well. And when the moment came, do what must be done." Clara nodded. She understood. The blade was not meant to fight, it was meant for mercy. For a baby if suffering grew unbearable, for herself if escape was impossible. She stitched it into her dress hem that night, hands steady despite the metallic taste of fear. The auction commenced at mid-morning beneath skies so bleak, they seemed to reflect the moral decay beneath them. About 40 onlookers gathered in the square. Most came for livestock or household goods, only a few for human chattel. Nathaniel Puit stood above them on the courthouse steps, deed in hand, reading in the same emotionless tone he used for a crippled mule. Female, approximately 23 years, house-trained, literate, though such skill held little value. With child. Minimum bid 12 cents. A murmur spread. 12 cents. Something was wrong. Several prospective buyers withdrew interest at once. Why buy property so clearly worthless? Silas Guthrie stood at the front, hat low, waiting for the moment everyone lost interest so he could buy Clara for the token price Duncan set. gaining total control over her fate. But the unexpected occurred. A man near the rear raised his hand. 12 cents, he called. Heads turned. A traveler, tall, gaunt, coat dusty from the road. His face suggested years of outdoor toil, but he stood too straight, looked too directly to be a laborer. Pewitt faltered. You bid 12 cents? Your name? Isaiah Mercer. Pewitt glanced at Guthrie, whose confusion was stark. This deviation was not part of the design. Duncan had arranged a private exchange, not a public contest. Do you possess 12 cents, Mr. Mercer? Mercer stepped forward, placed 12 pennies on the podium. I do. Judge Crenshaw watched from the doorway, present to ensure Duncan's plans proceeded without disruption, until now. Pewitt looked imploringly at Guthrie. The overseer reddened. If he bid 13 cents, he exposed his interest in the scheme. Duncan had ordered subtlety, but silence meant losing Clara. Tension thickened. Finally, Guthrie said, 13 cents. Mercer did not miss a beat. 25 cents? 50? $1? The crowd leaned in. This was not routine. Two men fighting over a woman priced as refuse. What secret value did they perceive? Guthrie offered $2. Mercer countered 5. At $10, Guthrie halted, not for lack of money, but because Duncan had demanded he avoid attention. The plan was to acquire her quietly, not turn her into spectacle. But spectacle had come anyway. $10 once, Pewitt called hesitantly. 10 twice. He glanced at Judge Crenshaw, who nodded. Sold to Mr. Isaiah Mercer for $10. Clara, standing silently to the side, wrists bound, her pregnancy visible beneath the thin dress, lifted her gaze to the man who had purchased her. Mercer met her eyes. His face did not move, but something in his stare made her breath catch. He recognized her. The paperwork was completed quickly. Mercer counted out coins one by one. Crenshaw witnessed with signature. Legally, Clara belonged to a man she had never seen before that morning. But the strange bidding had drawn notice. As Mercer led her briskly toward a wagon at the square's edge, Duncan emerged, having watched from inside. Mr. Mercer, he called sharply. A word. Mercer paused but kept hold of Clara's arm. He turned calmly. Mr. Fairholme. You are not local. No. Your purpose here? Business. Duncan stepped closer, trying to decipher this anomaly. The controlled plan had collapsed. What business? My own. His tone was quiet, firm. The transaction was lawful. The judge observed. Unless you dispute the sale. A question framed as challenge. Duncan recognized the trap. To object meant revealing motive and cruelty. No dispute, he said slowly. Though I wonder, why pay so much for property offered so cheaply? That is my concern, Mr. Fairholme. Good day. Mercer turned away, continuing to the wagon. Clara walked beside him, mind spinning. Nothing aligned. He had battled Guthrie, paid $10 for a woman marked worthless. And when she met his gaze, she saw something more frightening than the past months. He knew her. They reached the wagon, plain and canvas-covered. Mercer helped her climb in, firm, not harsh. He took the reins and steered away. They traveled in silence past storefronts, homes, the church's white spire, then out where fields yielded to pine woods. Only when the town was gone did Mercer speak. You don't remember me? Clara's voice was guarded. Should I? Richmond. August 1845, you were 15. I was present the day you were sold. Her blood chilled. You were there. Yes, he said, eyes fixed ahead. I worked for Ephraim Dalton, a trader. I drove wagons, managed his property. I watched you and your family on that block. I saw your mother scream when they tore you apart. I saw Edmund Fairholme pay $700 and lead you away. Clara's voice hardened. Then you are the same as them. I was the same. Mercer corrected. I am not now. He pulled a folded paper from his coat, passing it back without looking. Read. Her hands trembled as she opened it. A deed of manumission. When filed, it would grant freedom to an enslaved person. The name printed on the document belonged to her. Clara, no surname because one had never been permitted to her. But the details aligned. Her age, the burn scar along her left forearm from childhood. At the bottom, blank, waited a space for the owner's name. Isaiah Mercer's. Clara blinked at it, bewildered. I do not understand, she murmured. 8 years ago, Mercer said, his voice level yet laced with a buried ache. I watched your family torn apart on an auction stage. I told myself I was merely fulfilling my duties, that I bore no responsibility, that I was just a cog in a monstrous machine. His hands tightened around the reins. Then in New Orleans, I saw Ephraim Dalton kill a man slowly over $5. That night I understood that every person who takes part, however small, keeps the gears turning. He paused, steering around a fallen limb, so I left. I traveled north. I joined people working to dismantle the very thing I helped uphold. He drew in a long breath. 3 months back, a man arrived in Cincinnati. William Fairholme. He told us of a woman in Louisiana carrying his child and how his brother intended to sell her to a vicious overseer. He gave the date, the auction location. He begged for help. Clara's palm drifted protectively to her stomach. William sent you. He paid me, Mercer replied. Not to buy you, to take you north to safety, to Illinois, a place where you and your child could live free. Clara stared at the deed. Freedom, a word so often twisted into a weapon against the enslaved that it felt unreal, dangerous. Where is William? She asked. Mercer hesitated, the truth arriving before his voice did. He died 2 weeks ago. Fever, they claimed. But those I work with suspect otherwise, that someone from Louisiana found him. Grief tightened Clara's throat. William, impulsive and hopeful, who read her verses and spun impossible promises, who at least tried. Duncan had him killed. We cannot prove it, Mercer answered softly. But yes. Just when Clara seemed close to deliverance, the darkest part of the tale emerged. If the story chills you, share it with another lover of shadowed histories. Like the video, subscribe for more chilling mysteries. Let us uncover what follows. The wagon pressed north, the roads worsening, the woods deepening. Mercer explained their covert route, avoiding main roads, traveling mostly by night, trusting hidden safe houses run by free black families and sympathetic whites. It would take weeks to reach Illinois, months before true safety, yet something gnawed at Clara. A lifetime of peril had honed her instincts, and those instincts now throbbed with warning. Isaiah Mercer was lying, not wholly, but in a way that smelled rehearsed, orchestrated. The Richmond tale might hold truth. Remorse might be real, but this rescue felt staged. She revisited the auction. His perfect timing, his precise bid, the ease with which he bested Silas Guthrie. Too flawless. Duncan Fairholme never erred. If he wanted her sold to Guthrie, she would be in Guthrie's possession. Unless he wanted another outcome entirely, ice trickled down Clara's spine. This was not deliverance. It was pursuit. Again the wagon trundled north, the forest growing denser, the route lonelier. Mercer repeated the plan. Night travel, hidden allies, patience and secrecy. Freedom lay far ahead, but the unease would not fade. Clara's instincts, sharpened by survival, whispered danger. Mercer's shame might be genuine, his speech sincere, yet the rescue felt like theater, as if he followed someone else's design. His bidding at the auction had been too perfect, his timing impeccable, his advantage over Guthrie effortless. Duncan Fairholme did not miscalculate. If Guthrie were the intended buyer, so it would be. Unless Duncan desired something far crueler, the truth slammed into Clara. She was prey disguised as precious cargo. They camped in a remote clearing hidden deep where firelight would vanish among the trees. Mercer lit a modest flame and handed her dried meat and cornbread. Clara chewed without tasting, mind-turning, assembling terror from fragments. If Duncan sought her death, it would have been simple, quietly done at Bellamont. But he did not want her dead. He wanted William ruined beyond the grave, and William was gone beyond punishment. So Duncan needed another form of vengeance, proof that William's love brought ruin. Duncan needed William's child to suffer. He needed Clara's fate to look like justice, not malice. The escape was meant to collapse. Mercer wasn't saving her. He was delivering her to cruelty worse than Guthrie's. Somewhere ahead, hunters waited. They would claim she was a fugitive. The sale papers would be dismissed as forged. She would be dragged back to Duncan's estate in chains, her suffering blamed on William's rebellion. It was exquisite retribution. The only uncertainty was when the trap would snap. Clara waited until Mercer leaned back against a tree, his breathing deepening under the brim of his hat. Quietly, she reached into the hem of her dress and withdrew Bethy's hidden knife. Sharp, small, lethal enough. She tested its edge, felt its bite. She could kill him now. But what then? Alone, pregnant, lost in the Louisiana wilds without coin or map or allies. Capture would be swift. A lone pregnant black woman on the roads would be stopped, questioned, reclaimed as property. Violence would only delay a worse fate, so perhaps truth would serve her better. I know this is false, Clara murmured. Mercer remained still. Then slowly he pushed his hat back. Explain. Duncan crafted this, she said. He meant for me to flee. He meant for me to fail. You are part of it. Mercer's face did not change. Why would I agree to that? For safety. For money. Perhaps he threatened to expose you for aiding runaways. Perhaps he bought you off. I do not know the reason, but I know this journey is not what you claim. The fire whispered and cracked. An owl hooted in the dark. Finally, Mercer exhaled. You are wiser than William believed. Clara's fingers tightened around the knife. Then I am right. Partly, he said. Mercer leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Yes, he said. Duncan knows about this escape. And yes, he set it up to fail. But you're mistaken about my reasons for helping him. Then why? Clara demanded. Because if I refused, someone else would take my place. And they would hand you over to slave catchers who would do things to you I will not even speak aloud. Duncan gave me a choice. Guide you north so his men could take you without harming you, or refuse and let someone brutal ensure you suffered for trying to escape. Clara let out a bitter laugh. So you chose a kinder betrayal. I chose to give you one sliver of hope. What hope? You already told me we will be caught. We will, Mercer answered. Tomorrow afternoon, roughly 20 miles north. 4 men will be waiting. They will carry warrants claiming you are a runaway, and papers from Judge Crenshaw authorizing your return to Bellamont. They will be acting fully within the law. So there is no chance at all. There is exactly one, Mercer replied. He reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a leather pouch and tossed it to her. Inside is $150 and a letter of introduction to a family in Natchez, free people of color who can help you vanish. Not north, Duncan expects that. But south to New Orleans, then by ship to Mexico. A harder road, yes, but possible. Clara opened the pouch. The money and letter were genuine. Why would you do this? She whispered. Because I meant what I said. I am not the man I was in Richmond. And because William Fairholme, whatever his flaws, tried to do something good. I will not allow Duncan to twist that goodness into something monstrous. But you are still going to hand me over. Someone will be taken. Mercer replied quietly. It does not have to be you. He stood, went to the back of the wagon, and returned with a bundle of women's clothes. A dress like Clara's but larger, a shawl, a bonnet. 8 miles south is a settlement of free black families and poor whites. In that settlement is Ruth Chambers. She is your height, your complexion, and she is dying. Consumption, weeks maybe. I spoke with her family yesterday. I paid them $50. Clara stared, confused. I do not understand. Tomorrow you take the money and these garments. Walk south. Tell the Chambers family I sent you. They will hide you until Duncan's men leave the area. Then they will help you reach Natchez. Meanwhile, Ruth Chambers will ride in this wagon in your place. She can sit, but not walk. From afar in bonnet and shawl she will appear enough like you. When Duncan's men seize us, they will take her. By the time they realize the truth, you will be gone. Clara's thoughts spun. Ruth will die. Ruth is already dying, Mercer replied. Her family needs money to bury her and care for her children. This way her death has meaning. This is madness. This is your single chance, he said flatly. Duncan has watchers on every northern road. He has power, wealth, and the law itself as a shield. You cannot fight him head-on. You can only disappear so thoroughly that he can never reclaim you. Clara looked at her knife, then the pouch, then at Mercer's fire-lit face. If I run, Duncan will know you aided me. He will come for you. He will try, Mercer acknowledged. But I am harder to catch than you, and I have allies who can help me vanish as well. Why? Clara whispered, voice breaking. Why risk this for me? Mercer was silent before answering softly. In Richmond, when they tore you from your mother, you did not scream. You did not struggle. You stood there and looked at the men buying you as though you saw them for what they truly were. You were 15, and you carried more dignity than any of them ever would. I have seen that look in my dreams for 8 years. It is time I earned the peace to forget it. Tears pricked Clara's eyes, but she held them back. Tears were a danger, a surrender she had never permitted herself. Crying was weakness in the eyes of those who owned her body, but not her spirit. She learned long ago to turn sorrow into steel. Mercer spoke again, voice lowered as if the forest itself listened. "There is something else you should know about Duncan." "What?" "Before he died, William told us things. About Duncan. About Bellamont." Mercer hesitated. "You were not the first." Clara's blood iced. "The first what?" "The first woman Duncan sold to Silas Guthrie. There were 3 others in the last 5 years. All house servants, all young. Duncan invented minor offenses, reasons to dismiss them, then sold them to Guthrie at auction. Cheaply, always properly documented, always before Judge Crenshaw. What happened to them? 2 died within a year, one supposedly by accident, the other of fever, though the enslaved said she was beaten beyond healing. The 3rd, Sarah, vanished. Guthrie said she fled. No one ever saw her again?" Clara thought of Bethy, who had armed her with a knife and truth. Bethy would have witnessed these women vanish one by one and known exactly what awaited Clara in Guthrie's hands. Why would Duncan do it? She asked, though she already knew. "Because nothing restrained him," Mercer answered. "Because power without limit reveals the soul. Duncan Fairholme delights in suffering, especially suffering inflicted on women who possess intellect or dignity that threatens his ego." "And Judge Crenshaw allowed it?" "He enabled it. Every sale was lawful. The judge questioned nothing. He signed papers, collected fees, and looked away." Clara stared at her knife. 3 women gone before her, erased as though they never lived. William knew. He found records in Duncan's study a year ago. That was when he realized slavery itself, not just individual cruelty, was the evil. He begged Duncan to free Bellamont's enslaved people, even offered to relinquish his inheritance. Duncan mocked him. Mercer added wood to the flames. "When you became pregnant, William believed he could save one life if nothing else. He paid abolitionists in Cincinnati, arranged your escape. But Duncan learned of it. Someone in Cincinnati sold us out. Slave catchers sold the information to Duncan. When William discovered the plan was compromised, it was already in motion. Duncan engineered the auction so you would land exactly where he wanted you." "Then why did William go to Kentucky?" Clara whispered. "If he knew the plan failed?" Mercer's jaw tightened. "Because he was trying another path. He sought the Underground Railroad, hoping to alert conductors in Louisiana for a second rescue, one Duncan would not foresee. But Duncan's reach stretches farther than we ever imagined. Word got out. 3 days later, William was dead." Clara absorbed it slowly. William, reckless, idealistic William, had tried again and again, even when defeat stared him down. That had to matter, even if it cost him everything. "They said fever killed him," she murmured. "What truly happened? We may never know," Mercer replied quietly. William's body had been found in a Louisville boarding house. The owner claimed he had been ill for 2 days, suffering stomach pains and vomiting before passing in his sleep. Yet an abolitionist who viewed the corpse later reported blue fingernails and discolored lips, symptoms far more consistent with poison than fever. So Duncan killed his own brother or hired someone to do it. Either way, William had become an inconvenience, and Duncan was efficient at removing obstacles without staining his own hands. Clara considered the horrifying implication that a man so obsessed with mastery would murder his own kin, protected by a society that called itself civilized. "If Duncan could kill William and make it seem natural," she murmured, "then he could kill you as well. You understand that? Yes, this plan of yours, sending me south while Ruth takes my place, it succeeds only if Duncan believes you attempted to aid me but failed. If he suspects you meant to deceive him, you are as good as dead." "I am aware. Then why take such a risk?" Mercer met her eyes. "Because I am finished being the man who pretends not to see. I am finished claiming I am simply obeying orders, merely earning a living, merely surviving the world I was given. Every person who chooses safety over justice strengthens the chains around others. I cannot topple slavery alone, but I can save one life. I can do one thing that matters." Clara recognized the same stubborn, reckless hope that had propelled William. The same doomed but noble impulse that often killed good men. And yet it was the only force that ever moved the world forward. She drew a breath. "I will go south," she said. "But I want to know how you arranged this. The Chambers family, how did you find them? How did this plan begin?" I have spent 3 months in Louisiana laying groundwork for your escape, Mercer answered. I made contacts, offered payment to families willing to assist. The chambers were one of three. Three? You arranged multiple paths for me? I prepared for every possibility. Duncan is not the only one capable of strategy. Something shifted inside Clara. This man who once played a part in her family's destruction had spent months devising ways to save her, risking everything, planning with the same precision Duncan used for cruelty. Perhaps redemption was not a grand moment, but the slow, determined act of becoming someone else. And Ruth? Clara asked. When they discover she isn't me, what happens to her? Nothing. By then she will be near death. When Duncan's men realize the deception, Ruth will likely be unconscious or fever-stricken. They cannot torment someone already half gone, and they cannot prove she agreed to anything. For all anyone knows, I misidentified her. Duncan will never believe that. He doesn't need to believe it. He only needs to admit he cannot disprove it. Without proof, even Duncan Fairholme has limits, at least in public. Clara doubted that, but could see no better path. She thought of Ruth Chambers, a woman she had never met, sacrificing her final hours to give Clara a chance at life. No payment could equal such a gift. I want to meet her, Clara said. To thank her. That is unwise. Knowledge endangers both of you. I do not care about safety, Clara retorted, voice tight. A woman is dying for me. I will not leave without looking her in the face and promising I will not waste her sacrifice. Mercer hesitated, then nodded. We stop at dawn. You will have 15 minutes, no more. They reached the settlement just after sunrise, a scatter of cabins around a communal well, perhaps 30 souls, mostly free black families and a few impoverished whites who had no interest in racial hierarchies. A place unmarked on any map, surviving in the blind spots of authority. Ruth Chambers lived in a tiny dwelling at the edge of the clearing. Her husband had died 2 years prior in a logging accident. Her 3 children, ages 4 to 12, stayed with neighbors while their mother faded. Consumption did not grant gentle deaths. It carved a person out from the inside, turning each breath into a losing struggle. Clara entered with Mercer at her back. Only a single oiled paper window allowed light into the dim room. The air carried the heavy scent of sickness beneath the smoke of burning sage. Ruth lay beneath a thin blanket, barely moving, skin tinted gray, yet eyes startlingly lucid. You are the one, she whispered. I am Clara. They told me you were worth saving. I wanted to see. Clara stepped closer. I don't know if I deserve what you're giving. No person earns a life, Ruth murmured. But that isn't why I agreed. I did it because my children need what he paid. Because I am already dying. Better to die for a purpose. And your children? Clara whispered. My sister will raise them. The money will feed them through winter. Perhaps help them buy land to plant. More than I could have offered. Tears stung Clara's eyes again. She knelt, taking Ruth's frail hand. It felt like hollow bird bone beneath her fingers. I will remember you. My child will know your name. Ruth smiled faintly. Names mean little where I'm going. If remembering brings you comfort, remember. But live, girl. Let that baby live. Do not let me trade death for nothing. I will, Clara vowed. Whatever it costs. Good. Ruth's eyelids fluttered. Go now. Before I start coughing and make this less poetic. Claire turned to leave, but Ruth called softly again. One more thing. When they take me tomorrow, when they realize I am not you, they will rage, they will threaten. But they will not harm me. I will see to that. How? Ruth's eyes glowed with quiet fire. Because I will already be gone. Clara stiffened. What do you mean? Mercer stepped forward. We have arranged the timing. If Ruth passes during the confrontation, they lose every leverage. They cannot accuse, cannot punish, only accept failure. You plan to die at the exact moment? Clara whispered, stunned. I plan to choose my death, Ruth corrected. Consumption will claim me soon regardless. This way it counts. This way I am not merely erased. Clara understood. The medicine by the bed meant to ease suffering. She would take enough to slow her breath until it stopped at precisely the right moment. Terrible and brilliant. You have thought of everything, Clara breathed. No, Ruth rasped. He did. I am simply willing. Now go before I lose whatever strength makes me sound wise. Clara wanted to speak, to promise Ruth's children would know their mother died a hero. But Ruth's eyes were closed again, breath thin and fading. Mercer was already holding the door. Clara left the dark cabin knowing she would never see Ruth Chambers again. Knowing in 2 days that brave woman would be gone. Her life offered so Clara might claim her own. Outside, the morning sun was already warming the air. Mercer placed the leather pouch and the letter of introduction into Clara's hands. A footpath runs behind this cabin leading south through the woods, he instructed. Follow it 3 miles. It will bring you to a road. Head west until you find a tavern called the Black Swan. The keeper is named Marcus. Tell him Isaiah sent you. He'll guide you onward. After that, follow the letter's directions. Trust no one who doesn't give the passwords. Travel only by night. Avoid main roads. Reach Natchez. Board a ship. Go to Mexico. Fade so far from sight that Duncan Fairholme spends his days wondering where you vanished. Clara nodded, adjusting the clothes bundle under her arm, the weight of the coins pressing against her palm. And you? She asked. I continue north with Ruth, he answered. I deliver her to Duncan's men, then I disappear as well. He'll hunt you. Mercer's grim smile flickered. He's welcome to try. I've spent my life running, from my conscience, from my failures. Running is something I excel at. Clara longed to thank him, to speak about redemption and the possibility of choosing a different path, but language felt hollow. Instead, she did the unexpected. She stepped forward and embraced him. Mercer stiffened in surprise, then returned the gesture carefully, awkwardly. Thank you, she whispered. Live, he answered. That's all the thanks I need. They parted. Clara turned toward the hidden trail. She did not glance back. Looking back only sharpened the ache of leaving. Behind her, Isaiah Mercer watched until the trees swallowed her form. Then he returned inside, where Ruth Chambers waited on her bed, where a fragile plan balanced between salvation and ruin. The next day would decide its fate. Clara departed before sunrise, carrying the pouch and the bundle. Mercer saw her silhouette fade into the dim light, then began hitching the wagon. By dawn, Ruth sat in the wagon, wrapped in Clara's shawl, bonnet hiding her face. Her frame was so withered that the makeshift pregnancy pillow, stuffed with rags and tied firmly at her waist, almost passed for real. They rode north through the morning. Ruth made no sound. The illness had stolen most of her voice days ago. She simply sat, swaying gently with the wagon's jerks, breath thin and ragged. Around midday, 4 mounted men appeared ahead, just as Mercer had described, armed, stern, confident in the authority the law granted them to do anything they pleased. Their leader, Porter, approached holding papers. Isaiah Mercer. Yes. We have a warrant for the return of fugitive property. A Negro woman named Clara absconded from Bellamont. We believe she is in your custody. I lawfully purchased her, Mercer replied. I have the bill of sale. The sale was fraudulent. Judge Crenshaw overturned it. She must be returned to her rightful owner. Porter strode to the back of the wagon and threw aside the canvas. Ruth gazed up at him, eyes fever-bright, drifting between worlds. This her? Porter asked. A second man rode closer, squinting. Hard to see with the bonnet. Make her stand. She is gravely ill, Mercer said calmly. Stand her up, Porter snapped. Mercer crawled into the wagon, lifting Ruth gently. She swayed like a leaf, nearly collapsing. The stuffed pillow shifted beneath the shawl. Porter's eyes narrowed. Something's wrong with her. Consumption, Mercer replied. She fell ill on the road. I'm returning her south. She cannot survive travel north. Convenient, Porter muttered. He yanked Ruth's arm. She crumpled back into the wagon. The bonnet slipped, revealing sunken cheeks and gray skin. A faint resemblance to Clara existed, but only for someone not looking closely. This isn't her, Porter growled. It is, Mercer insisted. This is the woman I purchased in Greensburg. You lie. Porter jerked back, ordering his men to search. They ripped apart the wagon, tossing supplies, tearing canvas, scraping every corner. They found nothing because nothing was left to find. Porter's papers seemed useless now. Duncan had promised them an easy capture, and they were failing. Where is she? He barked. I told you, Mercer replied evenly. She's right there. Porter advanced a step. Duncan will hear about this. I hope he does, Mercer replied coolly. Perhaps then he'll explain why honest citizens are being harassed over a supposed property dispute. A tense stalemate fell. Porter could not kill Mercer without explaining why, nor could he seize Ruth without justifying the capture of a dying stranger. One writer, James Ridley, an ex-slave catcher with years of experience, studied Ruth closely. Something about this felt orchestrated. We question her, Ridley said. Porter crouched beside Ruth. Her eyes fluttered open, breath thin and erratic. "Where's Clara?" he demanded. "What did you do with her?" Ruth's eyes locked on his with effort, and she smiled, faint but dazzling. "Gone," she breathed. "Beyond your reach. Beyond Duncan Fairholme's reach. She is free." "Where?" "I will never tell." Blood touched her teeth. "Beat me, threaten me. I will be gone before you get answers." I made sure of it. Porter's face twitched in realization. She had poisoned herself. She had chosen her moment, to collapse Duncan's plan at its turning point. "Foolish woman," Porter muttered, uncertainty fraying his voice. "Duncan will find her eventually. He always does." "Perhaps," Ruth rasped. Blood bubbled as she spoke, foam gathering at her mouth. "Or perhaps she will vanish into a world where men like you have no dominion. Perhaps she will age in peace. Perhaps her child will be born free. Perhaps your whole cruel order will crumble, remembered only as a nightmare, so monstrous our descendants can hardly believe it existed." Her breath faltered, rattled, returned in a thin wheeze. "I die knowing I ruined what Duncan spent months crafting." "And you, what will you die knowing, Mr. Porter?" "That you hunted souls for a wage. That you upheld a world built on suffering. That you chose brutality over mercy." Ruth inhaled once more, and exhaled for the final time, lying still in the sweltering Louisiana sunlight, 4 hunters looming, Mercer watching from beside his torn-apart wagon. James Ridley would never erase the sight from memory. Porter stared at Ruth's body for a long, silent minute. At last he spoke. "Bury her here. We report we intercepted the wagon, but she died before questioning. We say Mercer insisted she was the woman from the auction, but we could not verify." "Duncan will know we failed," one man muttered. "Duncan will know exactly what happened," Porter corrected. "But he will have no proof. Without proof, he can do nothing." They buried Ruth Chambers in a shallow roadside grave. No marker, no farewell, just another black body lowered into Louisiana soil, one among countless dead who would never receive justice or remembrance. Mercer watched without expression. When the men rode off, leaving only disturbed earth behind, he remained there alone, staring at the raw patch of ground, holding the weight of sacrifice and the fragile hope purchased by Ruth Chambers' final breath. He offered no prayer. Faith meant nothing to him. But he spoke Ruth's name aloud 3 times as if repetition alone could serve as tribute to her sacrifice. Then he drove north. Just as arranged, he would uphold the illusion that he had been transporting Clara toward free soil. He would pretend bewilderment at her sudden death. He would submit a formal statement to Judge Crenshaw, asserting that the property had perished en route and requesting reimbursement. The court rejected it. Crenshaw ruled that Mercer had accepted the purchase in its existing condition and bore full liability. The 12-cent price was cited as proof that the seller recognized the defect. No payment would be made. It was, in its chilling way, the perfect judicial resolution. Every statute observed, every form in order, the law executed flawlessly, and yet Duncan Fairholme's vengeance had been undone by a woman on the brink of death and a former slave broker struggling toward redemption. Years passed. In 1868, James Ridley underwent a religious awakening and unburdened himself to a Methodist minister named Reverend Thomas Hargrove. Among his sins, he recounted that day in March 1853 with painstaking clarity. He described Ruth's final defiance, the blood on her mouth and the fierce lucid gaze in her failing eyes. He told how she managed a triumphant smile as life left her, certain she had shattered Duncan Fairholme's intricate engine of cruelty. "I have seized more than 200 fugitives," Ridley confessed. "I have watched men and women sob, plead, fight, pray, but never have I seen anyone embrace death with such intent." Ruth Chambers turned dying into rebellion. She passed from this world free, though the law denied it, and that memory burdens me more than all others. Reverend Hargrove recorded the account, aware of its gravity, but never revealed it publicly. It remained among his papers until his death in 1892, when his daughter Sarah uncovered it while organizing his belongings. She was horrified, not only by the details but by their silence. Her father had held this truth for 34 years without exposing it, quietly archiving horror instead of opposing it. Sarah Fletcher did what he had not. In 1893, she released the confession in a small abolition-leaning periodical nearly no one read, but she released it. She placed the truth on record. Through her, we know the specifics of Ruth Chambers' last moments. We know she chose her end deliberately. We know she smiled as she went, secure in the knowledge she had wrecked Duncan Fairholme's scheme. Duncan spent 6 months searching for Clara. He hired hunters, placed notices across 3 states, raised rewards from $500 to $2,000. He never found her. Judge Crenshaw died in 1861, on the eve of secession, and carried whatever truth he possessed to the grave. Duncan lived through the war but lost everything after it. Bellamont fell to Union torches in 1863. Duncan died penniless in a mobile boarding house in 1872, solitary and ruined. His wife Margaret had abandoned him long earlier. His brother's name vanished from conversation in his presence. Silas Guthrie, the overseer, turned up dead in 1854 in a ditch near Greensburg, officially drowned in shallow water. No one was charged. Nathaniel Pewitt remained parish recorder until 1863, before fleeing ahead of Union forces. He was never seen again. The receipt recovered during the 1897 courthouse restoration contained more than Clara's sale record. On its reverse, in William Fairholme's hand, was a message. To whomever finds this, my name is William Fairholme. I attempted to save a woman I loved from my brother's malice. I failed her, as I have failed in every matter that truly counted. If you read this, remember, the gravest evil is not committed by monstrous men, but by decent men who lack the courage to resist. I lacked it. May you possess it. The scholars who uncovered the note understood its significance instantly. They re-entombed it, sealing it back into the wall to lie hidden another century. When rediscovered in 1998, it was finally preserved. It resides in the Louisiana State Archives now, but Clara's ultimate fate remains a mystery. Some scholars suggest she reached Mexico, perhaps settling in Veracruz among a community of formerly enslaved fugitives. Others argue she sailed to Haiti. Some believe she perished along the way. One theory, proposed in 2006 by a genealogist, identifies a woman matching Clara's description in the 1870 Illinois census, listed as Clara Freeman with a mixed-race daughter born in 1853. The child's name, Ruth. If true, if Clara lived and built a life in liberty, then Isaiah Mercer's plan succeeded. The snare engineered to fail collapsed. Duncan's meticulous trap caught nothing. But certainty eludes us. The archives are fractured. War destroyed evidence. Silence buried truth. What remains are fragments, a deed, a receipt, a hidden message, census hints that may be coincidence, and questions without resolution. Perhaps history's quiet is itself an answer. Perhaps what we cannot trace means Clara truly vanished into freedom, beyond the reach of men who sought to own her. Perhaps she achieved what countless enslaved souls longed for: absolute autonomy from a system hungry to command every breath. Or perhaps she died nameless and unseen. Another, life extinguished by a machine, built to devour humanity with careful paperwork and polished legal language. The 12-cent sale stands as a monument to that uncertainty. It was lawful, witnessed, properly notarized. And yet it feels obscene beyond even the ordinary obscenity of slavery. The intentional reduction of a human life to a humiliating price. The cold bureaucracy turned into an instrument of pain. The cooperation of judges, clerks, and ordinary townspeople in a transaction crafted to wound. Every participant made a choice. Duncan chose vengeance. William chose risk, though too late. Mercer sought redemption. Judge Crenshaw chose the code over compassion. Ruth Chambers chose to turn her death into deliverance for another. Clara chose life at any cost, and the 7 witnesses chose to sanction an atrocity they surely recognized as monstrous. Their signatures endure, preserved in state records, a ledger of complicity. Their descendants spent decades trying to bury the truth, shielding themselves from the shame of what their forebears signed and saw and permitted. But stories like this surface. They demand breath. They refuse burial. What this tale reveals is that the most devastating instrument of oppression was never chain or lash. It was statute and ink. A system that rendered brutality legitimate, that allowed men to shatter lives with a quill and a handful of cheap coins, that sanctioned the sale of a pregnant woman for less than the cost of a meal. Not because she lacked worth, but to prove that worth could be dictated and erased by those in power. What do you make of this account? Do you believe Clara survived? Did she reach safety? Or did Duncan's malice chase her into oblivion? Share your thoughts below. If this story moved you and you want more unsettling histories like it, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share with those who love a haunting mystery. Until the next story.